Warriors enter the battlefield angry and leave a trail of destruction in their wake. I think this is potentially the most powerful class in Wartales and could easily see a party made entirely of Berserkers just roll over enemy forces. Nevertheless, in this guide, we are going to break down all of the different specializations, what they upgrade to, equipment options, synergies with other companions, and synergies with alchemical concoctions. Without further ado, let's break it all down. The warrior has some of the highest damage potential in the entire game and is middle of the road in terms of durability. They do damage based on strength, so their key stats here are going to be strength and constitution, with a splash of movement being really handy to be able to get to the exact points they need to be, and of course critical hit if you're feeling lucky. Critical hit especially synergizes with the Berserker build, so keep that in mind if you know that is the route you're going to take. Lagatha here is level 5, but has taken no upgrades at this point, so we're going to do a little bit of save scumming and show off what all her abilities can do. I'm going to do example builds showing off every single skill, but this is a class that I think has a clear hierarchy of abilities you can take. Berserker is the best, followed by Executioner, and I don't really like Sentinel. Valor point generation is kind of just general skills, but hopping down to the passives, Recklessness is so far and away better than the other two that I think any of the classes can benefit from taking that over these other passives. I actually have two warriors in the party right now, and so we are going to use Axe here to showcase the first build path, picking up Berserker, going into Valorous Duel, and grabbing Recklessness. Berserker gives us Rampage, so we do 3 attacks against the target. If we crit, we gain Fury, which means that we're going to do additional damage on our next attack. And once we give it a skill book, which you can purchase after winning Smots Arena, we now ignore Guard, making this an even better combat opener for us. Valorous Duel gives us Valor points every time we engage with an enemy, and Recklessness means that our very first attack is going to do an extra 150% damage. Leveling this up with a skill mastery book means that we're going to do 200% extra damage. This is honestly a skill level up that you might not take because you're just one-shotting enemies anyway. Axe is going to feel incredibly overpowered against all these enemies because he is wielding Splitter. This is the legendary weapon from the champion up in Vertruce, and it's leveled to level 7 because of the way the game scales enemies based on your party's level. She was meant to be a really hard encounter, so we got a super weapon out of this. Strength plus 35, and slice and dice. It does a ton of damage based on strength and applies bloodshed, which is similar to bleed or stacks of poison, and will do damage over time to the enemies, and it can do a lot of damage. We're rocking a medium armor enhanced with extra armor and strength. We've got the pocket knife to increase our critical damage, and we've made sure that we have Wrath here as one of our basic skills. We also have Run. I believe that was there by default. I don't usually use Run, but in this case, we really can kill multiple enemies in the very first round, and it could be useful to be able to get that extra movement to close in and seal the deal on a final kill. While Axe is likely going to steal the show with what the Berserker with the super weapon is able to accomplish, Lagatha here is going to go Executioner, gaining strength and giving us access to Cutting, Maelstrom, and medium armor. Cutting Maelstrom does not a great ratio of strength damage to the enemies in an area, but if you are striking multiple enemies, it will continue attacking for the same number of targets in the area. Once we give it a skill book, then when you kill an enemy, you get an additional attack. So you can very easily have a situation where this is going to absolutely pop off, and if you can potentially be attacking 3 enemies at once, I see a good chance of being able to get 5 attacks out with this thing. We're then going to grab Valorous Chain. This synergizes beautifully with the Cutting Maelstrom and also the basic attack out of a 2-handed axe. And finally, because we already have a copy of Recklessness and I want to show off the others, we're going to grab Fanaticism. This is the one passive that you could argue is good compared to Recklessness. At the end of every turn, you're going to gain Fury for the cost of a little bit of health, but once we skill it up, we lose the health, the self-damaging aspect of this. So this is going to be giving us an extra 50% damage at the beginning of every round after the first one, whereas Recklessness is giving us that enormous haymaker in only the very first turn. Because of how pivotal the very first turn is, I think that Recklessness is still better, and I'll take that pretty much every time over Fanaticism, but we gotta show off all the variety, so here we go. A Fanatic Executioner, which does sound really cool. Lagatha is bringing in the Great Pig Iron, guaranteed to crit if the enemies are poisoned, and the crits will also knock back enemies. She also has leather straps here, which is going to give her a little bit more guard. Very important because right now she's not bringing a shield, and with only medium armor, her durability is not the highest. Parties of guards are always good candidates for heavy combat situations. We're going to run Loki in, and then between the poison dagger and right between the eyes here to be able to get a little bit more, we're going to try and get a little bit more poisoning out there, guarantee some crits out of the Great Pig Iron. Lagatha with our Executioner's build is eyeing up the enemies. Are we going to be able to get all three in this Cutting Maelstrom? Oh, we do it! Bring them to their knees. 3 attacks. That's insane damage, of course spread out over a number of targets here. It's Valor Point hungry, but when we attack multiple enemies we get a Valor Point back, and now attacking multiple enemies again, these poisoned enemies we're guaranteed to crit, we'll be able to make back the Valor Points that we spent. And we still have movement. That's incredible. This guy decided he wanted to actually engage Axe. Okay, so this guy's level 6, and he has the highest guard value of any of these enemies. He's as durable as we can possibly fight. We're going to open up with the Rampage, because that ignores his guard value. And he's almost dead. He's already almost dead. Wrath will seal the deal and give us Fury because we gain the kill. And now we have enough movement to be able to close up to both of these enemies. And load up Slice and Dice. The boss's weapon has a huge area of effect. With Fury, it's doing 50% more damage. There we go. Cutting their armor to shreds and giving them stacks of bloodshed. That means at the end of the turn, they're each going to take 38 damage. Yeah, I would say that's a very successful turn out of Axe. These enemies seem to be quite slow at learning their lesson and are still bunched up here fighting Lagatha and Loki. So we're going to go here, be able to get that guaranteed crit against the poisoned one, and then come in with the Haymaker, hoping for a kill here to be able to get that extra attack. They are just too healthy right now. And then, honestly, we're going to come back around, and she does have first aid. We're going to use that over on Loki before bleeding really starts withering him down. Axe is running out of enemies to decimate over here, so we're just going to use Wrath. Absolutely drop that guy. Be able to pick up the stack of Fury, so that as he closes into his next target, he'll be able to have that bonus damage. Ooh, Loki's looking real bad over here. Well, that's fine. He should be able to cut his way out. We're going to go here, hop into a run. And pick off a few more of these guys, sidle up behind this guy to gain a Valor Point, and call it a turn. Poor Ao. Hopefully Odo can help her out here, and we'll be able to wrap up this battle pretty quick. Now Loki over here is dying, so we need Lagatha to come up in a big way. We're going to hand over first aid. Now the enemies are too spaced out to be able to use Valor's Chain to hit multiple enemies. That's really the downside of that form of Valor Point generation, is you're not really going to be able to guarantee that you can get it as reliably as Valor's Duel. We're just going to go with the basic here to make sure that we grab his attention. And leather straps coming in, giving us that little bit of base guard. Means that we should be able to survive until help can arrive from somewhere else. Now let's see, we could honestly use Loki now that he's back up to just finish things out for us here. Let's go right between the eyes, crit for 68. Oh, it was so close. It was so close. And then this guy, I mean, I could sneeze and kill him. Now we're galvanized, so I want to see some casually insane damage out of Axe here. 58, not really what I was looking at, but look at this, 98 stacks of bloodshed. Honestly, the weapon splitter with Slice and Dice, I feel like needs to be toned down. This means he's going to take 98 damage at the end of his next turn. It's crazy. Not that he's going to live to see that turn, but, you know. There's our showcase for both Berserker and Executioner. I think both of them were able to accurately show the highs that that kind of build is able to reach. And now we're going to round things out by picking up the Sentinel. This is actually going to reduce our strength, but give us a ton of constitution. Also, the only way that the warrior is able to grab heavy armor, so this is your tank version of the warrior. I don't like defensive stance. You could probably do better with one of the other versions, but just for variety's sake, we're going to grab it here. And then we're down to picking up Madness, which I think is absolute garbage. You gain increased damage when the enemy is below 30% health. When the enemy is that low on health, you should be able to kill them in one hit anyway. Also, the Sentinel giving us Ovation. I skipped over this before. All engaged allies in combat will gain Riposte, meaning that they are able to counterattack when the enemy hits them. Giving it the skill book means that all non-engaged allies will gain inspiration, doubling their movement. The killer here is that it has no range restrictions. The downside is that it costs 2 Valor points, which I feel like is really expensive for this feature. Riposte is certainly good, don't get me wrong, but I just never feel like I get the full value for 2 Valor points out of this ability. Madness, you get increased damage when the enemy is at 50% health or less instead of 30 when you skill it up. Still, I think it's garbage. Fighting a group of bandits here, we want to try and engage as many enemies as possible across the battlefield for Lagatha to take her turn and then give us Riposte so we get all those counterattacks. The enemy leader is up soon, and I'd really like Odo to be able to clap back at her, so I think it's time that we go ahead and set Lagatha off. So she's going to move up, going to engage this hoodlum over here. Use Obliteration, please don't crit. Alright, so we get the engage over here, and now we're going to use Ovation. So all engaged allies gain Riposte, which tragically does not include Lagatha. I feel like this is another point against an ability that I already didn't like. The fact that it doesn't apply to yourself just makes it feel so bad, because the warrior is definitely someone that you want to be engaging enemies, but she doesn't give it to herself. But now all the allies that we have who are not engaged, they gain inspiration. That's kind of nice. Here comes the boss's attack, and Odo hits her back for even more damage. There is the power of Riposte. Odo's not having a good day anyway, but we'll try and save him down there. Alright, Axe, I don't want you to completely steal Lagatha's show, because she's the new abilities on the block, as it were. But here we go. Kill those two right out the gate, and then, oh, this guy wants to take his turn. The little marauder wants to take his turn. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. Here comes another one of the Riposte counterattacks. Feels really good against the archers, who have a garbage melee attack anyway. So, another point for Lagatha's ability there. This Sentinel ability has so many issues with it. The 2 Valor points is too expensive. If it was 1 Valor point, I would be way more lenient on it. But it's 2 Valor points, which is up there with some of the biggest, most impactful abilities in the game. And what this does is it is slating you to be good at a battle tactic that is not the best tactic. This is good if you have piecemeal engagements all across the map, but what is a much better tactic is to be able to focus your fire on specific enemies, swing the numbers in your favor, and then roll over the enemies in that kind of mode. That makes this ability total deadweight if you want Lagatha to take a turn and say you don't have very many allies who are engaged. If it just gave them Riposte, regardless of being engaged, then that probably would justify the 2 Valor points. Inspiration is cute, but I don't put too much value on that either, so all in all, Sentinel seems pretty bad at this point. Maybe we'll get something as they increase the level cap to justify it. Same thing with Madness. I said it before, if your target is this low on health, you should be able to finish them off without any help. Rounding out our discussion to include equipment, obviously, Axe showed off that Splitter is insane. It would still be insane if it wasn't level 7, if it was level 5. Once you kill the champion that drops this, it's a no-brainer to include. If you're not going to use the legendary weapon, then I feel like the Great Pig Iron is probably the default. It drops off the bandits, so it's pretty plentiful. It's still very RNG dependent to be able to pick these up. The guaranteed crits on poisoned enemies gives her great synergy working with a rogue, and then the knockback on crit it's kind of okay. There's situations where it's nice to be able to disrupt the enemy, but then there's plenty of situations where you actually want her to be engaged with someone, and the crit knocking them back and thus meaning that they won't be engaged is actually a liability. I really don't like any of the one-handed axes. You have the one that you can craft that on a crit will apply bleeding. If you can get really high critical hit, this would be good, but it just feels like a little bit of a splash. There's something extra that's nice, and otherwise, I don't really like the one-handed axe. Off of the raiders, you can pick up an axe that on a attack, it will taunt the enemy, forcing them to attack you. That can have some fun applications, but I would much rather just have a huge two-handed axe that will kill whoever I square up against. The final note, and I don't have one in inventory right now, but the Inquisition Axe can reach out, grab a single target, and then score an attack of opportunity if you engage with that target. As long as you can make sure that you are not engaged at the beginning of your turns, that axe can do some insane single target damage. If we want to put an oil on our axe, which it feels like we kill things fast enough as it is, but if you want to make them even more dead, then the Berserker class has really good synergy with these oils. Honestly, so does the Executioner, because you're getting multiple attacks against a group of enemies. You can have a really high chance of being able to apply some nasty status effects. Strength oil is kind of a bait. It doesn't increase your strength by enough to be meaningful to me, but popping on some of these other status effects. Critical hit increase is really great, and so would be applying burning or applying poison to your targets after you've dealt all this damage to them, being able to finish them off, very similar to how Splitter puts on the stacks of bloodshed and then just wipes them out when they do take a turn. You have a lot of flexibility in what can be good in terms of your belt accessory. I like having this little bit of extra guard for the durability because I'm not rocking a shield or heavy armor. Of course, extra movement is never bad, and something that would be applying an additional status effect is also pretty nice. In terms of occupation, you could go Tinkerer to be able to grab the extra critical hit. Miner for a splash of Constitution and Strength gives you your critical stats. Cook will give you raw Constitution if you feel like your frontline warrior is going down, they're just too flimsy. And Blacksmith will give them some more raw strength if you just want to absolutely vaporize your enemies. That wraps up our guide for the warrior. Go Berserker and rampage your way to victory. Let me know in the comments if you think I missed anything important, and if you want to see the rest of my character guides, I have a few made already. Next up on the chopping block is the Brute. Really excited to be doing that guide for you guys, so subscribe to the channel if you want to make sure that you see exactly when those videos come out. Until next time, thank you guys for watching and have a good one.